Cool. Hi, everybody. My name is Matthew. I work at Too Young and Catalog as an artist and labels manager. As Fred mentioned, we're here to talk about the resistance of independent music and trends and technologies that are shaping the future of sync. So I think it's important to make sure we're all on the same page going into the discussion and to echo some of the thoughts and feelings that we discussed over the course of today. But we live in a world at the minute where 120,000 tracks are released every single day on Spotify. Pardon me, more and more of which is actually AI generated songs. So I recently read a report by the Confederation of Societies, Authors and Composers, which said that 20% of all streaming revenue by 2028 will come from AI generated music. 60% of all revenue from libraries will also come from AI generated music. So we face a real issue about not only originality, but in the context of sync, discoverability as well. Compounding this issue, we have independent artists facing an uneven playing field. So we have opaque negotiations between major labels and major publishers and DSPs, as well as the growing control of distribution networks by these major players as well. So this puts added stress onto independent pipelines and revenue streams, and also in the context of sync, discoverability. So as the music industry evolves, it's going to be the independent sector that finds solutions for independent right holders. And these are some of the things that we're going to discuss today. So I'm joined by three amazing panelists, colleagues, and industry experts. To my left, we have Sylvia, who is the Director of Sync and Licensing at City Slang. Many of you know City Slang for Caribou, who's actually playing tonight.
Tonight,
Okay.
9:45, at the forum
Be there.
for everybody.
But actually, the label was set up in the 90s to facilitate licensing of American independent music to European film and TV, and has grown into the label we know today. And much more eclectic and beyond artists such as Caribou, involving Jose Gonzalez and a really amazing roster. And Sylvia's role there is helping to facilitate these partnerships between the artist and the brands without kind of compromising the artistic integrity. So
Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction.
To the left of Sylvia, we have Lucy from the infamous Warp Records. For any of you who have been living under a rock for the last however many years, Warp is one of the most influential electronic labels ever. One of my personal favorites also was the hub for groundbreaking artists such as Architecture and Aphex Twin. And Lucy handles the licensing, is the creative licensing director.
Yeah, that'll do.
Yeah, for what recorded, but also the distributed labels such as On You Sound, Disciples, All Saints, has worked on some amazing campaigns. Which personal favorite was the orchestrated
Oh yeah, it was
version.
actually a Spanish project with Canada for orchestrated version of Avril 14.
14 for Zara, no?
Aphex for Zara. Yeah, it was cool.
Beautiful. And then finally, last but not least, we have Don Farley from Beggars Music. Beggars Music works really closely with imprints such as True Pampered Sounds, 4AD, Matador, and artists such as Burial, King Cruel. And Dom works as a sync manager there, handling all licensing requests for Beggars Music, and has previously worked at ThinkSync, and worked on projects such as Rocks and
Perfect 10.
Perfect
yeah,
10.
Neva, yeah, as a music supervisor. Yeah.
Amazing. So thank you so much for giving up your time today.
Thank you.
And being here and sharing your knowledge and expertise. So the topic's quite a big topic. So I've broken it down into three sections. First, we're going to talk about how independent music is resisting and being prolific within the current climate that we will go on to discuss with major labels and libraries, etc., etc. And then we're going to look at how sync can scale and what this means in terms of protecting the value of copyrights. And eventually, we'll go on to talking about sync DSPs and the different pros and cons that we see within this. Cool. Let's
Cool.
get going.
Yeah.
Sounds
Sounds
good.
good.
So first section, how independent music cuts through the noise. So sync is a fast-moving world. Often the brief comes in on Monday. The creative search was due last Friday, and the placement is out the same week. In those situations, I've often found that independent music has the edge, but also independent music in these spaces is competing with convenient and easy to license music. So stock music, AI-generated music, etc. So my first question, Lucy, is how do you feel independent right holders position themselves to rise above not just major labels, but also the growing presence of AI-generated and stock music in sync?
Start off at 10.
Yeah. Big one.
Let's get right into it now.
Well, I think they've all got their different qualities between, independent music, independent commercial music. For me, is you described how quickly things can get processed and licensed and approved. A lot of that is down to having very, very close relationships to our artists. Some of our artists on our label don't even have a manager, so it is literally just phone the artist and say, "Are you up for this?" And in the case of Warp, we also publish a lot of our artists as well, so we can act as a one-stop shop for both the master and the publishing. So yeah, speed is good and helpful, and especially if you're in a position where you control the rights globally rather than having things portioned out territorially. And yeah, so I guess artist relationships is really key, but also just having a very clear knowledge of the catalogue. I mean, we're generally, on the whole, dealing with less music than if we were looking after 400,000 library tracks or 2 million, major label songs. Like, so we have a relatively intimate knowledge of our catalogue already. So whilst we do use search engines at Warp to dig into the music and the catalogue, very often I think people in independent music are able to quickly think about a track just off the bat and go, oh, well, have you actually thought about this, and can respond quite quickly. So yeah, those are the first things that come to mind, I suppose.
I also feel like maybe with a closeness of relationship as well, you understand exactly what this person or this artist is passionate about. So like that helps to inform, okay, like I can pitch this artist for this particular placement, the music fits amazingly, but also I know that this person really wants to be involved in fashion or this, that, and the other. And you can go with that information knowing that you have that close relationship with the artist and really sell that bit of music and that collaboration as well. Maybe it goes beyond just the musical aspect as well.
Yeah, it's true. I think because you're sort of dealing with more of a boutique roster, you may have caught up with them the week prior and actually have all of the pre-masters for their next record that isn't out for another 10 months. So like you're thinking about their catalog, you're thinking about everything that's coming, you're thinking about what they care about, whether they're a vegan or not, and whether they're going to be up for a McDonald's advert or not. It's sort of you have that information stored a lot of the time, and yeah, I think the relationship with the artist is quite fundamental to that for sure.
Amazing. I guess also as well, like there's the aspect of these briefs kind of being lower in value than maybe we saw 10 years ago, 20 years ago, just with the way that digital media has changed. So do you feel like having that closeness of relationship helps you be a bit more flexible with pricing maybe as well, if it's something that you know that this person is passionate about? Or
I think pricing flexibility, I mean, I feel like I've been doing music licensing now for, I don't know 13, 14 years. I feel like everyone's been talking about budgets coming down since I started. You know what I mean? Like everyone's always concerned about budgets. And I think in general, you have to be flexible and open-minded to how you think about pricing. Like in any scenario, 10,000 euros for an artist might be absolutely like just nowhere near enough for the project or for that artist, or it actually just timing wise might be exactly what they need right now. So that there's occasions where you might accept a lower fee just because of the timing for that particular artist and knowing what is going on for them or what they might need. So I think I think you can be, I suppose, in comparison maybe to major labels. I never like it when people say, "Oh, we don't have enough money for a major label track, so we've come to you." You're like, "Cool, thanks." Yeah, come on in. There's a sliding scale, right? Like there's artists on major labels that might accept lower fees, and then there's other artists on our roster who command really high fees because of the scale of them as an artist. So I kind of the pricing distinction between those two for me doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't add up. But I think the fact that, at least in our case, and I'm sure for you guys, you have a similar scenario, especially where music is one stop, there is like sometimes an easier decision to make around pricing flexibility because it's all just, we're going to be able to process it quickly and get it done.
That makes sense, I guess, as well for the situations where the pricing is quite fixed with like catwalks and stuff like this as well. It just makes it makes sense. Thinking about this from the other perspective in terms of competing with stock music and I guess convenient music as well, like what do you think gives the edge in comparison to those typologies of tracks? So stuff that is stock music and is generated by AI. Dom?
Well, I think it's the kind of cultural impact of the artist. There's, sync for a lot of artists is actually quite a small portion of their income. It's part of a much, much wider kind of artistic project. And when you kind of go to a show or you take a music supervisor to a show, you're kind of seeing a lot more than just listening to the songs. You're seeing the visual aesthetic of the artist. You're seeing the crowd makeup. You're seeing how people are responding to the music. So there is a really big human impact to it that goes far beyond what I think stock music can offer,
Yeah.
and what AI generated music can offer.
Yeah, it gives the brands and whoever is licensing that music that opportunity to, I guess, connect to like a real movement, a real audience, a real scene,
Yeah,
which you could never get necessarily with AI or stock music, which
exactly that.
in this like attention economy that we find ourselves in is probably something that's becoming more and more important for these brands as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Also, I feel like in these situations, curation must play an aspect. You know, like if I'm putting myself in the headspace of a music supervisor and they've got a specific texture, sound, or whatever it might be for their project in mind, and going to, you know, a major label or these kind of places, the creation is not necessarily as specific as well. So I think that's also something that might be really interesting for a music buyer to be like, okay, I need something experimental, cutting edge, okay, electronic. I'm going to go to Lucy. Lucy, what have you got similar to this as well? I think that can be a real impact. Cool. And then I guess from a more like practical perspective, thinking about this and thinking about responding quickly and tackling these cues from like an operational perspective, like I think it's fair to say that independent labels have smaller teams than major labels, so have to think smartly about how they navigate the repertoire. Are you using any internal tools or systems or anything that helps you respond quickly, be more agile, be more responsive to these kind of briefs?
Can I answer the question?
Go ahead, Sylvia.
Well, it is like I think the peculiarity of any indie labels is just you have I don't know your next door neighbor is also working on the same brief for another small publishing company, and then you're gonna ask directly, and you have this just be more effective and more responsive, or I don't know just being able to know where the request is gonna go. I don't know, it's coming from the specific territory, then I'm gonna forward it to the person that is competent in this sense. And I feel like it is about like creating this, I don't know, relationship with also the music supervisors and that they would trust. And as you were saying, for example, even like this roster boutique,
Yeah.
they know the artists that we're signing, that
Yeah.
they have a specific depth to it, I would say. Or
They're trusting you guys and your
Yeah,
curation
or
and
that
what you're doing.
I want to believe that they like our music generally. So sometimes it's also like it's not only about requesting a song specifically and directly, but it's also if a brief comes in, then I'm gonna suggest new artist, and they would trust the taste, and I'm gonna give it a listen.
I guess that's like feeding onto the idea of like building these strong relationships with different people involved in kind of licensing projects and yeah, that sense of trust into what you're going to present to them and pitch for those opportunities. But I think what's interesting or what I'd like to know from I guess a more operational perspective is that how you navigate that, and is there anything that you use maybe internally that helps you understand your catalog and helps you respond to these kind of briefs?
Yeah, well, like everybody uses Disco, I
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah.
And this is I have I don't know love and hate with that platform. I feel we're all getting in the. I mean, you basically have to buy all the features
Yeah.
in different like levels, and you have a limit of tracks, and I have a limit of taggings.
Yeah.
So like as also Lucy was saying, we know more or less our catalog. Okay, this artist could fit in the genre, could fit the brief. Even if it doesn't, maybe you can give this quirky kind of like edge to the audiovisual. But obviously, there are certain specific briefs that sometimes come in, like, oh, we need to match that lyrics, and that's obviously more specific. And
Straight into disco, boom, searching.
but this is also
Themes.
not, yeah, this is also not like. I feel there's room for improving in the sense, like system that will offer basically everything.
Yeah, because I
Right.
guess disco handles part of it and part of it very effectively as well as in like catalog management, and internally
Yeah.
it's a killer system. No one can disagree with that. But Lucy,
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, I mean, I love disco, to be honest. I'm not getting a commission from them or anything, but I think that actually, as you know, from a music search perspective, like purely from a creative perspective, I think it has. You're right, it does have a lot of features that you have to bolt on and all the rest of it, but actually, as that tech has developed, I think it is super helpful. Everything from just like being able to search by BPM maybe searching by some of their auto like AI creative metadata, not because it's always perfectly accurate, but sometimes it's actually just quite useful if like you're on your 8th search of the day and you don't really know what to think about any music anymore, and you just search for female vocals and rock in this BPM,
Yeah.
and it's just like throws up some ideas which might not be what you want, but it leads you on the next path that does feel right.
Yeah.
Mm.
And we've used it for a very long time, and like the way in which we now have a huge long history of all the searches we've ever done, it's really useful for me to be like, oh, my colleague Jasmine put this track in for this type of brief, and oh no way, she selected those. You know, you have this like whole like seed trail
Yeah.
of projects. So like the more you use it, the more you get out of it, and
Yeah.
I do think it is useful. But yeah, from an end to end perspective, like it is missing a lot. It is missing, you know, the client servicing side. It is missing the contracting. It is missing the pricing. So I think it serves a really good purpose for
Yeah.
internal purposes, and you know, it's better than Dropbox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No offense, Dropbox. You know what I mean? Like
Or
that's
like
where kind of everyone started off. You know,
Or burning vinyls, as
just
David
like
mentioned. like,
CD. I used to go around with CDs. Sorry, but
I do feel, yeah, that is true. That is like really automatic. That is really quick, but at the same time, it's a head-on. It's like, oh, if you're even like an indie, you need to all this feature, and it's like at the same time, it's some sort of like a big, I don't know, like it's something that you're forced to. Because otherwise
Yes.
you're not gonna go anywhere else in the business. So like when we first started,
Yeah.
everybody started using Disco, and it was like, oh, if you're not using it, then we're not accepting. You know, like Dropbox.
yes, yeah.
You know, so
It is the Uber. It is the Uber.
What about beyond Disco? Is there anything that you're using internally, Dom, to help you? Because I guess with Beggars, it's also quite a substantial catalogue, right?
Yeah, actually, on the publishing side, it's quite small.
Yeah.
So the publishing side is maybe 10,000 songs.
Okay.
And of that, maybe 6 or 7,000 might be sort of suitable to be pitching for sync.
Okay.
So we kind of will have a sort of own internal playlists. Obviously, Disco is probably the main resource, really. And as a publisher, we're kind of ingesting lyrics and things like that. So if a lyric search does come up, we have an internal system and we can look through for those. But yeah, really, it's Disco actually. I mean, I wish I had.
What about
something more to say.
thinking beyond like technology? Like, do you have external teams that you can rely on to also help with these queues? And like, do you work with specific, I guess, different publishers and territories or reps that help you also to tackle these queues in a more global vision, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a kind of a very broad network of sub-publishers who are fantastic and
Yeah.
a really great creative resource as well. And we're kind of sharing things between us, and also if there's a specific tweak that they want made to a song that they feel might work really well in their territory, then they can speak to us and we can make a sync edit of them. If there's a kind of sync remix that they're looking for, again, they can speak to us. And, you know, it's a very collaborative approach, I suppose, in the creativity that way. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's important, you know, like when we look at this in terms of majors and indies, you know, we talked about it today already. Like a lot of bigger labels and publishers will have different branches in all different territories, working at repertoire to service these queues. But with independent labels, it's not, or publishers, it's not necessarily the same. So you have to pick your correct
Yeah.
partners to help that and to make, to work as effectively as possible with the resources that we have in that space. You know.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think I was going to say on that point, you know, when you are working with international partners, it's about kind of finding partners that can mimic a independent mindset as well,
Yeah.
because you know, the advantage of independent music often is that you can be a one-stop shop in the way that stock music is packaged up, but then you need to remain part of a relatively small pool of music. Otherwise, you are just becoming the catalogue of 400,000 tracks that everyone's trying to wade through. Like, I think part of what keeps independent music as accessible and engaging and quick to access as possible is actually not being in a giant pool
Yeah.
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
music, you know. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's actually working with really small partners, at least from our
Yeah,
perspective.
I also, for us it's the same, like being like Citizen, a really small team, and we also have a sister company from a publishing side that is also even smaller. So like we work a lot first with sub-publisher, but also with sync agent in different territories. But I feel like that is how it sometimes is supposed to be, because you don't have the knowledge what's
Can't do,
going on
can't do
there.
everything, no.
Yeah.
In this
Which is
situation,
like
also local
language.
knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah.
For example, in certain territories, I mean, I'm lucky enough that I'm Italian, but like with Italy, you have to know the language because most of people don't. And it's the same in France, for example. They like to work with sub and raps more than actually if the label is from another country, you know.
Mm.
And I feel that is really helpful and is like necessary sometimes.
Also, like just to, I guess, follow up with you, Lucy, like one of the things that I see with Warp is that obviously the main label is extremely curated, but then also you're distributing very curated labels as well. Do you feel like that helps you navigating briefs that come in, working with like these different labels that maybe artists on those labels wouldn't fit into the Warp recorded main label, but you still have these like amazing curators, A&Rs like under the umbrella, so you can, yeah, I just wonder
Yeah.
if that's something that's more it's beneficial in responding to these briefs also.
Yeah, we provide label services to a handful of independent labels, or sometimes they're labels that are actually just an artist who want to have their own label, so
Yeah.
they are the some part of the label. And we do that because there's lots of music that we like that maybe isn't necessarily the right fit for Warp Records, but really like what they do, or where they actually just don't want like an official label. They just want to do their own thing, but work with us and collaborate with us for distribution and marketing and licensing.
Okay.
The benefit for us as a business is that well, it increases traffic to us. People are, maybe coming for one piece of music and won't be able to license it, so we give them alternatives. But also when we have a brief coming in, generally speaking, the other labels we work with are in sort of, interesting subgenres. So
Kind of adjacent still to Warp recordings, but like in different or
just like it could be in like reggae, or it could be in drone metal, or it could be like
Drone
I
metal.
mean literally yeah. I'm just thinking of all the labels, like just stuff that are like stuff that just gets into lots and lots of different niches, and like that's what we lean into, and that's what we like. And that means that it continues to, people continue to come to think of us, and they're like, actually we want something really different, or something from this really particular time period and this style of music that only happened for like 18 months, and then that type of music disappeared again. You know what I mean? So yeah, for us it gives us more to pitch.
Yeah.
And it also just widens our network more generally.
Yeah,
So,
from a supervisor or a brand's point of view as well, if you guys have got a great relationship, that's really interesting for them because they can go to you and they know that you've got that Warp under your umbrella, but also that you can have access to this amazing kind of different genres and stuff like this. So
yeah, it's good from an A&R point of view as well. It means that some of the labels that we work with and the artists that we work with, will then collaborate with artists on Warp. It's just like extending the family, basically. It's quite nice. Yeah.
cool. Okay, so I think we should move into the next section, which is thinking more about a scalable future. So we're all very aware of the fact that the global media is skyrocketing, and from a sync perspective, that's often being asked to do more for less, more often, I would say is fair. And this can feel like a challenge, but it actually represents a growing market. And with that, lots of opportunity, right? So we need to start thinking about how do we meet this increasing demand without reducing the value of a copyright. Okay. So I feel like independent right holders are uniquely positioned to lead this conversation. Smaller teams, less bureaucracy, as we kind of discussed just now, and the flexibility to experiment with scalable workflows. So thinking about a scalable future and thinking about how we can service more queues quickly, faster, what do you think at the minute, and I'm going to ask you this, Dom, is the biggest blocker for sync to scale ethically and effectively for everybody?
I think there's probably three. I think the first one is fragmentation of rights. So having many, many different rights holders for a single work. The clearance process is extremely time consuming. If you're really up against a tight deadline, you're probably going to avoid that completely, and people might avoid commercial music licensing completely.
Yeah.
I think the frustrating thing with that is that when you actually do find all these very disparate rights holders, you're like sending them the exact same email, right? It's like a copy pasted email, which is something that's kind of crying out for automation.
Yeah.
I think the second thing is the sort of quirks and complexities of the administrative side,
Yep.
which if you know what you're doing is again quite time consuming, but if you don't know what you're doing, it's just almost impossible to know where to go. Even looking up like a PRO registration or filling out a Q sheet, or even knowing what language to use in your request, so that when it comes to licensing something, you've not excluded something by accident just because you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think there's a really big part of the kind of audiovisual community who don't really understand those sort of things and are kind of intimidated by it, so they just don't bother. And then the third thing that I think is a big barrier to the scalability is just an understanding of how much music costs.
Yep.
I think there's, again, this huge portion of people working in the audiovisual world who don't really understand the price of music. So even if they were to go to a rights holder for a quote, they wouldn't really know if it was good or bad, or their negotiating position is already flawed because yeah, they just simply don't have a clue of how much it costs. So I think those three things are big barriers to scaling up. I think the kind of ethics of it at the end of that process, whether it's really streamlined, there just needs to be kind of an artist consent.
Yeah.
At the end of it, the artist needs to have some sort of approval over where their music is used. They need to have a kind of opportunity to defend the value
Yeah.
of their music as well. But all the other things, I think, yeah, can be made much more efficient.
Yeah, I think even, we discussed it previously with like the territorial aspect. Like maybe you've got a
Yeah.
copyright and you have a featured artist or like a sample in there, and sometimes you're getting passed from like office to office to understand who exactly is the approval person for this copyright, and that in itself is a huge blocker, no, to scale.
Yeah, or just simply like, I don't know, on a publishing perspective, having somebody with like a small percentage in the copyright and saying no. And this is still like just maybe not because itself it is about the sync, but just because I feel sometimes for like smaller percentages it's not even worth doing the work for it. And it is like a little bit of a lack of education too of what
Sure.
that means to negotiate even certain deals. Like, I don't know, we had from the master side, for example, we usually keep 100% of the master rights, but sometimes side artists, producers, they get approval rights. That means if a syncs come in, they have to approve, or we don't have it, but like in case we get something that maybe.
Okay.
And this is also something that I feel like this is. I mean, I understand that is sometimes like side artists don't even have a name on the song. It's like so. I feel this is a little bit of a bummer for maybe upcoming artists that really would like a sync, but they have this blocker.
And a lot of the time in those situations, is it that the relationship between the artist and this person who has the 5% is not great,
I'm
or
sure the artist doesn't even know that the request got in because sometimes it goes really quick and
Yeah.
it's not. And I mean, maybe the artist does. I mean, we had also cases of the producer maybe produces a track and it was really famous, obviously, producing a track of an artist that barely makes to, I don't know, 100,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. And I feel this is something, that could mean something, either for the track or even to be promoted in a certain territory. Sometimes it's just about being discovered.
I think
We had multiple times artists having sync in a territory and, for that one specific track, and then that track got requested and requested and requested again.
that was like the catalyst moment from that original sync.
Yeah.
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 I think also licensing brings a lot of these things to the surface, because maybe someone goes into a studio, they write their track, and then it happens, and then a placement comes along, and suddenly it's a nice figure, and that person that was maybe in the room in that session is then
always-
like
they always
like, oh, do you remember that time?
Yeah.
Where's,
Come out the
where's my
woodwork.
20%?
Yeah.
You know. But it's that educational aspect of understanding copyright law, making sure that everything's registered properly at the start,
Yeah.
it's
even-
clean.
I think I was just going to say, like, I think, yeah, to Dom's point, there's like the ecosystem in which the music industry operates in is clunky and old fashioned in lots of ways, and like, yeah, just copyright information, like stuff outside of your own label and publishing world, like you have to exist within the broader thing, and that in itself is challenging. But I think we even the most organized record label, organized publisher in the world also finds it hard to keep track of their own rights. Like what is
Mhm, yeah.
expired, like the rights have expired. Oh right, since when? Oh no, it's automatically extended. Like sometimes you're dealing with contracts that were signed 30 years ago, and like it might have been a handshake. So there is no detail about what's going to happen when the sync comes in.
No.
So yeah, there are, people have got issues with there's challenges with in your own house.
Yep.
And there's challenges on the outside too. So yeah, I think it's where you have to, like, I'm afraid sometimes be a bit brutal. Like if there's ambiguity and it looks a bit off, like it might be complicated, then you just have to. It's one way to filter the music down a little bit, is to just go, I think that has a sample, and I haven't got a time to worry about
Yeah.
it.
Figure that out. Like,
goodbye.
exclusive,
Yeah.
Yeah.
bye, let's move
Yeah.
quick. Let's go.
This is the thing. Like, I feel sometimes when lawyers are actually negotiating certain deals, they don't know this aspect. They think like, oh no, I'm gonna try to do the best for my artist, which it actually isn't, because maybe the side artist doesn't even like it's fine. Okay, you can do whatever, but
And in that sense, you mean what, pushing a deal too far, maybe, or
Yeah, and like just getting like in certain, I mean, you have to trust who has the rights. It's not that the royalties are not going to pay it out.
yeah,
Obviously, that person is going to receive the royalties. It's just about like having
I think a
a
good
yes or no on a track.
Yeah, I think a good
Makes sense.
example of that is where sync percentages on a master on a recording are up for debate on a per sync basis. So
Yeah.
sometimes you have like a feature on a track, and they've the line in the contract will say, yes, we agree to sync, but the percentage which we want to claim on that is to be discussed on a per sync basis.
did not even know
Yeah.
that was a
Oh,
thing.
I didn't know we come across
Yeah,
that either.
yeah,
Wow.
we got a couple of them.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
new to me. Like we
Complicated.
stick
You know,
with
it's like
the
a sliding scale depending on how everyone's feeling.
How
depending
do
on
you
the
how do you
budget.
react in those situations? Do you have like a
I don't pitch them.
maximum?
I
Like,
often
yeah,
don't
just
pitch
buy
them. I
it.
just
Yeah.
don't pitch them or suggest a
Do
different
the
track.
artists
And
know
so
this?
that's
Like,
what I mean about sometimes perhaps a lawyer thinking that this is going to be a positive thing for an artist
Exactly,
because we can we'll fight hard and we'll get a good deal on the day, and it's like the day's been and gone. Like
Yeah.
this
we're
was
not
your chance.
Yeah.
we're not
Yeah.
going to have time to muck about with that. It puts everyone off. It puts the music supervisor off. It puts
Yeah.
the brand off. It puts me off. And you want clarity from the get go. Like sign in the studio, ideally.
Because this is what we're battling against, you know. It's like it's this very convenient music where they have none of these issues. You can go onto a platform,
Yeah.
like get the stock music, and you don't have to think about these things. So
Yeah.
to be then your lawyer negotiating for these kind of rights in the contracts is kind of, you know, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
I feel beside kind of cutting your legs from the beginning, but not because, I mean, obviously if something has to go quick, you're certainly not going to choose that one song. I mean, we had experiences where the request came from a specific country and it got to us, city Germany, and it was in Italy. Obviously we were dealing with this directly, and we got bounced back from the Italian office back to Germany, back to Italy, back to the US, because the contract got signed in the US. And I was like, can you talk to each other? Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a
this
Spider-Man meme, no? Isn't it? Where
exactly,
everyone's
yeah,
just
it
like,
felt
you-
a little bit like this. And sometimes it's just like standing in the middle, being like, if I regret actually going to that direction, like you rather, okay, next track is gonna be nice.
Yeah.
Okay, like looking at this from the other perspective, this is
There's a lot of blockers.
yeah, this
Yeah.
is the state of the nation, isn't it? But let's think about this from the other perspective. What do you think are the aspects of sync which can scale? And
Well, yeah, there's a few, I guess. Obviously, I think pricing is also something that can't really scale.
Yeah.
You can give a range. Some music supervisors now start doing it, especially in gaming. I found it quite often, just like, oh, this is the fee range for the artist. This is artist range 1, 2, or 3.
'cause that's
and-
something that comes into Young quite a lot. Is, you know, that clients want a ballpark, like before they even like consider like the creative aspect of it. They
Yeah.
kind of need to
Yeah.
understand the
Yeah.
range of it. You
I-
know.
Yeah, it was like, it happened to us too. I've got a call from a music supervisor saying like, hey, listing other 2 free tracks. And they told me like, oh, can you match that fee? Otherwise, I don't think you're going to make it in the cut. And this is also still like something that requires a little bit human touch, obviously, because you can't just like blindly say yes or no to prefix fee or ranges. You need to evaluate the situation. I mean, I was saying before, even like an artist might be more famous in a specific territory rather than the other. Sometimes even because of a sync.
Yeah.
I don't know if we had
That
artists.
brings value in itself. Like,
Exactly, I had artists like having a big sync, big commercial in this territory, and then happen another big thing in the same territory. And obviously, the fee, if a request will come from that specific territory, will be different than another.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not
there's
gambling,
still
but
a rationale behind that, though,
yeah,
isn't
there's
there?
a
You know?
request. This is how I feel. I think like finance work in a
And
way.
you can justify that though as well. At least you can go back to the client and be like, hey, look, this is why this cost this much. We
Yeah.
had success with this campaign. They're doing live shows here, etc., etc.
And
And that's why that's very rational. It's not just like, hey, like
Yeah.
100,000.
Obviously at a certain point the music has a value, and you also have, I mean, I think like a lot of brands might have forgotten over the years, but you need to pay for the music as well. It's not
But,
just like
we've got to protect that value in the work, the creation that goes behind the scenes of these copyrights. But yeah, interested to know from both of you guys. Do you think what aspects off sync can you see scaling?
For me, it's just media terms. I'm sick of talking about everyone's different definitions of archival
Which they can't
rights
even
and
enforce a lot of the time.
our definition of out of home media is this, and well, ours is, that actually we could standardize a lot of that. Let's just get a global summit. Everyone just be like, this is what digital advertising means. This is what TV broadcast means, and there's some.
It sounds so simple, but
But sometimes even what MFN means.
I think just some like legal definitions for media, like we can and we should standardize that. Let's just all agree to what those things mean, because you can get so tied in knots.
But
on
even not just like the music industry as well, but then on the other side of this as well, like
on the brand, you have to
So that's like
with the brand, maybe the music supervisor, and you as a label about what the definition means. But then also between labels and publishers on the same track. Oh well, why are they saying that it's defined in this way? Because but we're all agreeing that we want the track and the license to go ahead. So you may have confirmed a deal, great, everyone's going to get paid, and then you spend 4 months talking about digital out of home. And the definition of it, it's like, no, let's just get over. So that can scale.
You want to see that scaled ASAP.
Yeah.
I think I would actually just completely agree with Lucy. And also it kind of opens up this kind of accessibility to sync as well. Once you have these terms and there's kind of like a very concrete definition for them, ultimately a lot of these kind of brands are trying to achieve the same thing with an online campaign. The licensing terms are going to be the same. And by standardizing it, it means that you're opening up that world to people who might be less familiar with licensing, and they're kind of able to go into it much more confidently.
It does need. I was going to say it does need detail, like that. Within, you can't be too generalized by what you mean by paid digital advertising, because within that there are so many component parts. But there's like a broad definition, and then there's sub definitions within that, and you're adding them to the cart as appropriate.
I guess though also on top of like the aspects of the media definitions, then we can start thinking about if those are agreed, we can start to automate and scale contracting and invoicing and all of these things around it as well, which take up so much of our time now. And like I've seen it even with Too Young when there's been a placement and it's considerable amount of money, and then it takes months for the contract to come through, and it's not a small amount of money we're talking about here, but it's just because they're so overwhelmed and so such a backlog of these kind of executions that
sometimes
you could take them off our plate.
Sometimes contracts don't get signed until after the campaign has finished airing. So you're like, what was the point?
Cool. It's a bit of a letdown at that point, isn't it? It's like, okay, it's done.
What does the contract mean if it's already happened?
And they can't enforce it a lot of the time because it's not like
the option.
And I think also kind of a lot of even the kind of general terms and conditions in these contracts, it would just be slightly different wording that is got the same sentiment, really. You've got your indemnity, you've got your injunctive relief, you've got your representations and warranty.
Slightly different order.
Slightly different order, but ultimately the sentiment is identical. And so that's definitely something that can kind of be, because the amendment process and going back and forth and redlining stuff does take a long time.
I feel it's also like with all social media emerging right now, like all the different type of small usages that you meant before. It's like I didn't even know TikTok challenges existed when they start popping up in contracts. Like, what does that mean? What is it different than TikTok, and what is a TikTok challenge? And I felt like really old, like looking at this, and I was like, this is something that has to be updated. Like there has to be schooled. I feel like there has to be some sort of information about those rights as well.
It's like there's always the educational aspect to making sure things are representative of where the industry is at, instead of constantly chasing our tails and trying to catch up with this.
Is there time for one more before the next bit, or do we need to move on?
Lucy.
So I just thought of another thing. I'm just like, it's quite therapeutic.
Get out.
I don't know, it might be a contentious one, but I actually think the means by which music is briefed could be streamlined and scaled, because as a rights holder, we're very often receiving the same brief maybe 4, 5, 6 times from different music supervisors.
How many Aphex Twin briefs do you get in?
No, but I mean music searches.
Okay. So,
I don't mean like a quote request. I mean like, the same brief worded slightly differently, sometimes with different fees, which is always fun, from different music supervisors. And I think that some of that is, I feel bad for the music supervisors who are all pitching on the same job, sometimes for a small fee. But I guess it's kind of more a point to the brands and to the agencies to actually either put more trust and more belief in like working with one partner
Yeah.
and working closely with them, because you're probably going to get the same, if not better and quicker result. But
you see this with more brands now, is that they're bringing music supervisors in-house to be able to, I think, manage the problem that you're
Yeah.
addressing there, and be able to actually
they're
go
spending
out with like a coherent kind of, this nonsensical briefing out that's just
it's cutting
not useful for
into
anybody.
it's cutting into the music license fee. It's demoralizing for music supervisors. Spending loads of time pitching and no time winning briefs. So like, I just feel like there needs to be a bit more confidence and trust and like, dare I say, loyalty, at least on a project basis, to working with one partner. So that was just that. Yeah.
No, yeah, I feel
Cool.
the same. And we had also like, just briefly, but we also had like situations where like even the request that came from like a rap and someone we work with non-exclusive, and it feels like also a lot of losing time, because it's also me trying to deal with like who got it first, and it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be that difficult.
Yeah. Do you send the same tracks to different people? Do you send them different tracks? Different
They trying to catch you out?
for
Like,
the
what's
same
happening?
thing.
Let's try to pitch two different like
Yeah.
playlists at least.
Such a waste of time. It's a waste of time for everyone.
Scale that. Let's do it. Let's go. No, moving into the last section of this, we want to think about moving on from the scaling sync, about technologies around this, and I think the most relevant one, and something that also I'm involved in within Too Young, is about sync DSPs, and about being able to license music in a more efficient way, in an ethical way still, and connecting especially independent right holders directly with brands. So we hopefully see less of these briefs that we're talking about here. So these platforms promise to streamline music discovery and clearance, but I want to discuss if they really live up to this promise. So I want to ask you, and I'm going to go to you, Dom, is like, what do you see as the most positive aspect of a sync platform? And just to be clear to everyone, these are somewhere where you can go onto an app, onto a platform, look for your music, and essentially leave with an executed license. This is what we define as a sync DSP. So what do you think is the biggest positive aspect of it?
Well, I think the 3 points that I made earlier about the barriers to sync scaling are kind of solved by these DSPs. So although you still have the rights still remain fragmented, when you're sending the request out, it's just automated straight to everyone's inbox.
I think that's like a key thing, is like hiding. I want to say the mess, but
It is.
and
Yeah,
it
no,
is
it
a
is.
mess of music copyright and fragmentation to the client, so that they can just go on and see a piece of music,
Yeah.
and assess that based on if it fits their narrative, if it fits their creative, as opposed to thinking about, I've got to go X, Y, Z. Who do I approach first? Who do I negotiate with?
Yeah. And similarly, with the information that's on these DSPs that rights holders have uploaded, whether it's lyrics, whether it's the kind of PRO registration information, all these sort of things, suddenly the administrative side of it is automated as well.
Yeah.
A cue sheet is just generated immediately. And that's incredibly valuable too. And then in the pricing structure, there's sort of smart pricing. So it does offer a ballpark range, so that when you are doing a search, and you're kind of finding music to pitch, you'll be able to see against each song, okay, well, this is going to clear between the 6 to 10K mark or something like that.
So you're not going to get a Beyonce track for like, so you're not going to get a Beyonce track for 10 grand, for example.
Yeah. But it means that you can kind of search very quickly, and you can search and feel kind of confident that it's going to work within your budget. There is obviously still like an approval level at the end, and the artist might push back and be like, well, actually, I think that my song is worth this. But for the most part, the smart pricing is pretty accurate.
Yeah. It sets like a good platform for the negotiation.
Yeah.
Like for you to express some context, be like, actually, we did a recent placement like this for a bit more, like, and add that rationale behind it.
And it at least kind of demystifies it a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can I add something?
Of course, that's what we're here to do.
I think, those platforms are actually really good for discoverability. I think you mentioned already at the beginning, it is like quite hard, I feel sometimes, for new artists to just break through, to just be heard, or like even make
Now
it
more
into
than
the
ever.
sync word. Yeah, it's like so, pardon the word, but repetitive sometimes. You get all the same references, and most of the time they decide to pick a cover, but there's so much good music out there. There's like so many amazing new artists that, sometimes supervisors don't even know about. And I feel, like DSPs are good to go away from this, I don't know, Spotify algorithm,
we
even
can't
like,
rely on that. we spoke about it today, you know, like there's opaque negotiations behind the scenes with DSPs and certain labels, publishers, etc. So if you're relying on your emerging act to be discovered for a sync through this Spotify or Apple, whoever it
Yeah.
is, you know, like it's kind of feels out of your hands in that sense, doesn't it? You
Or
know?
even the pricing is just based on like, oh, this artist doesn't have enough monthly listeners. Sorry, we're not gonna match that figure. And it feels a little bit insulting at times because it feels that it's a monopoly that are driven by like digital DSPs sometimes that don't really apply to the sync word.
And also, Spotify streams doesn't equal popularity.
Exactly. Or it doesn't
There's actually a lot of
doesn't
artists.
equal artistic like value either, you know?
But just there's a lot of artists fans who like that there might be part of a community that just don't use Spotify, that where it's just they like buying records and going to live music, or they would rather buy directly from an artist Bandcamp, or you know, like it isn't the only gauge of an artist's popularity, and too
No.
often I think Spotify streams is used as a way to the only variable by which to price music.
And maybe for certain brands that is their way of valuing music, you know? Like if you're a Coca-Cola or someone like this, you know, you want to have something that's maybe instantly recognizable, like instantly of that moment. But I've seen it firsthand with Too Young, where we've done catwalks, and you know, none of the songs have necessarily had more than like 50,000 streams, but the supervisor, the brand, they really see like the artistic value in the song. It really amplifies their narrative. So it's not necessarily about streams across all kinds of brands, but you still need to make that connection between the music and the licensor, the buyer, right? And I guess that's what's a really nice thing. If you can have those people in the room using a tool like a sync DSP, then it kind of gets rid of that barrier and it gives them instant connection to the music, which is something we're missing a bit now, you know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like back to your question, I think for Warp anyway, it remains to be seen about sync DSPs because we haven't yet experienced the full benefit of that tech and what is possible there. But I, on a personal level, think it's really, really important that it happens and that we get to, for all the reasons that, you know, Dom and Sylvia have described, but also like just a kind of a wider point about business development generally for us as a record label and a publisher. Like, you know, a huge portion of our jobs is going out and meeting clients, making new connections, wherever it is that you are based, but also in other territories. And you're working tirelessly to always expand your network. But the reality is there's only so many people you can get to meet in a week. And actually often now it's harder than ever to meet with people because, well, there's a range of reasons why it's hard to meet people. But there's only so much that you can do as an individual to expand your network. And I think DSP is, you know, like in my opinion, is like for a record label and a publisher is like a business card as well. You know, you're putting you're going to be reaching individuals who work at agencies or music supervisors that you may never be able to actually get to meet and have that conversation. Like, we're always going to value those like personal relationships really highly, but I also value like inbound business without doing anything.
You know? Together, amazing, no?
Like, I'm very happy for it to just like land on our lap as well.
That was the COVID times.
Cool. Well, I think we're actually quite near the end time, so I was wondering, does anyone from the audience have any questions for these amazing panelists to end off the session? Cool.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this really insightful panel. My name is Sarah. I'm a Berkeley Valencia master's student, and I'm actually working with our sync department at our student-run record label, so a lot of really interesting insights. Something I found to be a problem is even at a music school, so many of the musicians we talk to and work with don't fully understand rights management or PRO registration or all of these components that are so essential to their success in sync. And I was curious if you had any solutions or things that we could be doing to be better educating artists on a larger scale, because it seems like if this is a problem here, it's probably a problem everywhere.
Anyone?
If I would just
go ahead.
Yeah.
If depending on where the artist is based, I really recommend that they speak with whatever their local like association is for independent music. If they're an independent artist in the UK, it's AIM, and they put on really good like, you know, beginner like workshops for artists on like what is a sync, you know, how to know your rights, like this is how it all works. So I think like there, you know, around the world there are kind of versions of that. Certainly in the UK, there's an AIM sync conference every year. But you're not wrong. I think it is also challenging.
And it's systematic as well. You know, we see this at every single level. You know, so
Yeah.
I think it's the aspect of just education.
Yeah, I feel also like with all the ancillary rights and neighboring rights, they sometimes get confused with sync
Yeah.
through even like the blanket licenses. I feel there has to be, like just I don't know, in Germany, for example, is there for the master side is GFA, and they also like by calling they will tell you what is the difference between this or this. Like like sometimes even podcasts is this gray zone that nobody knows, but I also do it myself. I just call them up and I tell them like, hey, this evolved on the publishing side. What do we do on the master? Is it time or should we wait again? It's like, no, this is private. You have to do it yourself. And then you do it. But it's still like sometimes just a matter of like knowing the institution and reaching out to them directly, I feel.
Yeah, I feel like we run into the issue a lot of the artists are like, well, what I do is create art. I'm not somebody who wants to be a lawyer as well.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to handle that, but it's such an important part for their art too. So just making sure that's clear. Yeah.
Cool.
So I might have missed it on the last one, and I'm sorry if I did, but could you talk about what catalog does?
Yeah.
It's a softball maybe, but I just would like to hear more about what catalog does.
Yeah, so it's a project done by Too Young. It's essentially a way to come into the platform, to do your creative search, to manage your ongoing projects and placements, and actually leave with a fully executed license. So the idea is that all the songs within the platform are one stop, but it doesn't necessarily mean that one entity owns that particular song. It could be that it's a Beggar's publishing and a Warp master, but for the client, they come on there, they see a ballpark, a smart pricing that's backed up by a rationale of like things that we talked about, stream, social media, but also other things that we think bring value to a copyright, such as this artist got press coverage, et cetera, and that helps guide the client to make an offer that makes sense for the rights holder. And then the process goes all the way to the end, so you can get your executed license, your invoice, etc. So we actually started getting the first external users a couple of weeks ago, and then we're going out for a full launch in September this year. And actually, the amazing panelists that are here today are partners of the platform. It's a completely independent-led initiative, and something that we're very, very proud of. I was actually speaking to Fred earlier, who's somewhere in here, and I said that I was going to run a demo for anyone that's interested, who's based here. So if anyone is interested, catch me after this, and we'll exchange emails and stuff like this, and then we can set up a session just to run through it. But yeah, the platform will be launching later this year. And come get your licenses.
Thanks.
Bring on the
Any more questions? Or cool. Well, thank you so much for your time today.